Hey, everybody, and thanks for joining us for this. What's happening? Why are you guys laughing? What I missed?
You could not have coughed at a worse time.
Did I cough while we were on?
Just that split second when it transitioned, you could just hear.
Gross. I'm sorry. I was trying to get any coughs. I was like forcing it out so that I wouldn't cough on the show. That's awful. Thanks a lot, Emma. I appreciate that. I'm gonna blame you for that one, not myself.
That's hilarious.
Well, thanks for joining us, y'all. Welcome into the PHNX Suns pregame show, brought to you by the DraftKings Sportsbook app, America's #1 sportsbook app. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so that you know whenever we are live. I'm Lindsay Smith. That's Saul Bookman. That's Gerald Bourget. How are you guys doing today?
Fantastic.
Doing okay. We're on the mend. We're on the recovery.
Gerald, you hanging in there?
I'm hanging in there.
You're almost out of the whatever flu thing, cough, cold you think you got?
Yeah, and good thing I didn't spread it to you, but based on that intro, I'm not so sure.
Mark in the chat said that intro was sick. Oh my God, awesome. How embarrassing. Well, today we've got the Suns taking on the San Antonio Spurs. And as our title says, could this one be another trap game? I don't know. We shall see. We're going to start today's show off with all the tidbits before we get into the meat and the potatoes, because we got a couple things we got to share for you guys. So we're going to start with the injury report off the top, because that's what leads us into all the conversations. On the Suns side, still without Cam Johnson and Chris Paul, Torrey Craig remains out as well. He missed Friday's game due to that right groin strain that he had happen on Wednesday's game. Mikal Bridges is probable with right knee soreness. In Friday night's game, he said that he kind of hyperextended it there towards the end of that one. I'm glad to see that he's probable, because I feel like that means he will play. How are you guys feeling about Mikal?
He is available after all. He will play today.
Well, there you go, Gerald. Coming in and bringing us nuggets off the top. And then on the Spurs side, we've got Jakob Poeltl, who's out. Jeremy Sohan is out. Doug McDermott is doubtful. Josh Richardson is questionable. And Romeo Langford is also questionable. So quite a few people on this injury report list.
This is a make money game right here. This is if you're a fringe guy or you're looking to pad some stats and make some money down the road, this is how you do it. Take advantage of these opportunities, because there ain't shit on the other side of that court.
Yeah, and there's a lot of guys out on both teams, but it's good that the Suns have Mikal at least. He's going to keep that Ironman streak of, I think this will be his 332nd consecutive game, which is all of the NBA games that he's been in since he's come to the league. So glad that streak is still kept alive and that the Suns have a little bit of help, because if he had been out, they would have really been hurting for wing depth today.
Okay, so Espo and I talked about this Friday night, and I've seen a lot of people kind of mention this because it was brought up in the chat. Kind of low-key feel like I would rather Mikal drop that streak so that it's just not like hanging over. I don't know that he sits there and thinks about it on a regular basis or throughout a game whatsoever, but I feel like it is kind of an elephant in the room to an extent. Are you guys feeling any type of way towards it?
As someone who has hyperextended his knee before, it's scary in the moment and for like maybe the next couple hours to a day, because you're always feeling like it's going to, every time you take a step, it feels like it's going to go back the other way again. But it doesn't last very long, and I have no concerns about it. I feel like Mikal and the training staff, especially considering how they've dealt with everybody else, they're going to make the right decision. I don't think anybody gives a shit about that streak. It's cool. Don't get me wrong. It's something to point to and talk about, how consistent Mikal Bridges is, but I don't think anybody cares in terms of health and safety, whether or not Mikal Bridges is playing to keep up a streak or not.
Right. I think it's more of a superstitious thing, and I don't think they would play him if he was less than 100%. I know that Mikal and Book are probably the two guys on the team that play heavy minutes and would play through minor injuries if they had to. But yeah, you look at the way that they've handled all the guys on this roster, kind of erring on the side of caution, to the point that the roster is totally depleted at this point. I don't know that they would do that with Mikal. And if they do, they're only going to put him in there for 2 minutes to keep the streak alive and then sub him out. We saw it like at the end of the season last year when all the starters sat except for him just so he could keep the streak alive. But, I doubt that's what's going on here.
Well, we know he's in, but we know Torrey Craig is out. And last game, the Suns started Dario Saric at that 4 spot. They did just tweet out 2 minutes ago that Dario is going to be starting again for them tonight. Mm-hmm. It wasn't the best plan on Friday. It felt like everything was real clogged up with him and DA on the court at the same time. How are you guys feeling about this?
If it didn't work once, why not try it again? It's not going to be any different. But, yeah, maybe they can scheme some things a little bit to free up a little bit of that middle. But I don't know. We'll see.
I think the biggest thing for me was the spacing was a little bit off, and you could tell like DA, his dives opened up a ton of threes in that first quarter. They got off to a really good start. And if you look at the lineup data for that 5-man group, they were actually, I think they were plus 15 and 16 minutes together in that game. So lineup wise, it wasn't a bad lineup. I just think like Dario had a rough time. He's not a 4. Like that's just not a position that he's able to play at this point in his career. And Monty said after the game, I think that it kind of puts him in a tough spot, a guy who hasn't really been playing much. You throw him into games as a starter. You ask him to defend quicker, more mobile 4s, and like also, play out of position compared to where he was most effective as a small ball 5. So it's putting him in a tough spot, but as long as the lineup is okay, I'm okay with it because it maintains your bench rotation a little bit. The problem is the bench was awful last game, and they need to be better this game.
Mike B in the chat said Dario will be fine. Sarge will have 12 and 10 today, 2 threes.
Okay.
Would you guys put some money down on that?
No,
nope.
But we appreciate the optimism.
Good effort.
Oh no. I hope he plays better. You know me, even in the pregame on Friday, I want Dario to play well. Like I just feel so bad for all of the stuff that he had to endure over the last handful of years. Mm-hmm. That it was really exciting to see him finally be back with this team and able to actually contribute. Obviously, there's going to be bumps in the road. He's much older now. He's coming off of injuries. But I still like every time I see him out there, I'm rooting for the homie. I just want him to have a good game. So hopefully tonight is a little bit better than Friday night.
Right. And I think it's not I know that people were low on that lineup the other night, but the reasoning behind it was the offensive rebounding that the Rockets had. I think they were number 1 or number 2 in the league in offensive rebounds. The Spurs are a very similar team. I think they're 7th in offensive rebounds per game and 8th in second chance points per game. So Dario didn't really help much on that front last game, but I understand the thinking, I guess. And again, you want to keep your bench rotation as much intact as you can, even during a stretch where you're obviously starting 2 or 3 guys that normally wouldn't be starting. So I get the thinking. Hopefully it pans out a little bit better than it did against Houston.
So
dreaming is free. Dreaming is free.
This is true. So one of the things about the Spurs is they do give up a lot of points to their opponents. They also give up a lot of points to their opponent's shooting guards. Mm-hmm. So the potential for another big Devin Booker night is pretty high. How are you guys feeling about D-Book in this one?
I mean, this should be a relatively easy game, but we've seen, listen, players are players. When they know that they have an advantage, sometimes you can have a letdown, but I don't expect Devin Booker to do that. I think he'll have a solid game, probably. I'm going to say 35 tonight.
Okay, 35. So he's
in three quarters.
Okay, in 3 quarters. That would be
Okay.
impressive. I mean, he's averaging 45 over the last 3 games, so obviously he's been on this hot streak. This would be a good game for him to continue to keep it up, especially based on what you were saying about how many points the Spurs give up to opposing shooting guards. I think Book kind of recognizes where this roster is at right now with so many guys out and has really stepped up on that end. It would be a rough night for him to kind of have an off shooting night, especially with the way that he's been playing. But I would say probably lock it in for another 30-point game at least tonight.
In 4 quarters or 3 quarters, Gerald?
Now
we have to be specific about what we call out for Book.
I'm going to say 34 in 4 quarters tonight. I think this is going to be another one of those games where, they're just missing a lot of guys. Like nothing's going to come easy for this team, even if they do come out with that kind of vengeance mindset, because this team, they're a bunch of sore losers, as Monty calls them. They've been stewing on this loss for a couple days now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not often that we see this team drop back-to-back games. We did see it earlier this season, but again, very depleted team at that point in time. And it was it felt real fluky, but it doesn't happen often, and it's the Spurs. So if you drop back-to-back games against the Rockets and the Spurs, we got to have a come to Jesus moment and sit back and really take in what we're putting out there on the court.
Well, also you have 2 games coming up. I mean, the Mavericks and the Celtics that are not going to be easy games. So you got to take advantage of the games that are in front of you that you should win. So that's also probably right there in the forefront as well.
Oh my God, are you guys so excited for tomorrow's game and all the craziness that's going to happen in your mentions?
Not at all. Not even remotely.
No.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one. Okay, so now that we kind of got the lowdown on what's going on between these 2 teams, how you guys feeling? Who you got and by how much?
I think the Suns will win this relatively easily. I don't think they'll cover the spread, but I do believe that they'll win the game by 8.
Yeah, I've also got Suns by 8. I think this is going to be one that's close kind of throughout, but I think near the end they'll make enough plays in the clutch to kind of pull away.
So I've got Suns by 10 and Espo has Suns by 11. I don't know. I think that they're going to be, like you said, they're a bunch of sore losers. I think they're going to be really upset about dropping that game Friday night. They're going to come out here today knowing it's a back-to-back as well and want to put this one away early and try and get those starters out as soon as possible to save some of their energy for tomorrow's game. I just can't imagine the Suns allowing this one to become a close game.
I hope so, because with
that
Dallas,
would be so frustrating.
Right, it would. And if they have that mindset and they wrap this up in 3 quarters and get to rest their guys throughout the 4th, that'd be huge because you've got that back-to-back against the Mavs tomorrow. So that would be a huge help. But I don't know. I just have a weird feeling about this one for whatever reason. Hopefully that's just the nasal congestion. We'll see.
The positive here is that at least this back-to-back, the travel in between the 2 teams is not too rough. So after today, they'll be able to, it's like an hour flight, maybe an hour and a half from San Antonio to Dallas. That's not too far of a trip for them to make. So at least, and then it's an early game too. So you get a pretty good amount of time between these 2, even though it's technically a back-to-back. It's
actually only 45 minutes.
Okay.
And I only know this because it's the only time I ever got to fly first class. When I was coming back from Iraq, we went to Baltimore and then flew to Dallas, and then from Dallas to San Antonio. And when we got to Dallas, since we were uniformed, American Airlines was like, "Hey, we'll upgrade you to first class." And I was like, "Sweet!" And it was just like I blinked and the flight was over. I was like,
"That's rough, man. Your only first class flight was a 45-minute flight."
Yeah.
At least you got to experience it, though.
That's true.
Yeah, the air was a little different.
Yeah, it was. I remember my first class experience was from Boston back to Phoenix. And the person who I was working for, he traveled all the time. So he had a ton of points and he threw me a bone and was like, "You can use my points and I'll upgrade you on your way back." And I was like, "God bless you," because that is the worst flight ever. And I felt so out of place. I'm not going to lie, because I think I was like 21 maybe. So like never, I barely even had like flown a whole lot at that point.
Was this like a sugar daddy situation, or did you really work for him?
No, I worked for him. He worked for MLB.com, and I was doing like production managing and kind of figuring out all the spring training and the fall league schedules and like booking crews and everything. And we went out to Boston to do a little bit of figure skating coverage as well. So that's what that was for.
I apologize because before the Suns, actually no, the Coyotes. Before that, I don't even know what you were all about, what you did in your previous life or anything like that. So this is all new to me.
Well, it was all sports. It was just a boatload of different jobs because I was freelance for the first like 4 years, I would say, outside of like college or throughout college into my career. So a ton of stuff. Literally everybody who would pay me money to do a job within this industry, I was like, yes, absolutely. You want me to tell you like my most embarrassing story during that time?
Sure.
So I was stage managing for a boxing fight at the Celebrity Theater, and it was so chaotic. And I was, again, really young at this point in time, so I was still pretty new and everything. And how it worked, so you have like the ring, and then you have another platform that the announcers sit on, which is where I was at. And then you have the ground. Well, as a stage manager, I had to sit on the platform for the broadcasters. But then in order to cue the ring announcer, I had to get off the platform, go around to the other side of the ring, put on a secondary headset and cue him. Mm-hmm. Well, they were like in my ear, they were like, go, 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 as far as like running to the other headset to cue the ring announcer. I tripped over cables, getting off of that platform, fell face first, hit my head, like right here on my cheekbone, into a chair in the VIP section, got up, booked it to the other headset so that I could cue the ring announcer. And when I came back, everyone who had saw me fall had called the EMTs over to check me for a concussion because it was that bad. Like it looked that bad to everybody else in there. And it was so embarrassing. I was like starting to like talk to this guy and he was there. And after the fight, we met up. I had a big old welt on my face and they were like, yeah, we heard about it. I was like,
oh no. That's
the
brutal.
only thing that I regret from that moment was that nobody got it on video. I was like, bro, all these freaking cameras in this place and nobody captured that moment and could send it to me. Like, I want that.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah. Anyway, I digress. Now that we've gone down memory lane, what does Vegas think about tonight's game? Saul, you want to take this one for us?
Yeah, Vegas thinks the Suns are going to win by 10. And like I said, I think, they've traditionally played down to opponents, especially on the road. And I don't think they're going to cover that spread. But, it's not a terrible bet.
Okay, so if it's exactly at 10, like my pick is, do you still cover or does it have to be over 10?
Over 10.
Okay. All right. Well, what are you guys putting bets down on the DraftKings Sportsbook app?
I think DA is going to have a bounce back. He only had 8 and 6 the other night. Pretty less than par performance. So I would take him at 425. He'll get involved early.
Okay. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, Espo has the correct score. Spurs 105, Suns 115 at plus 185. That's a long shot bet for very minimal odds, I feel like. But and then I've got minus 100 that I will say, oh no, at some point during the post game. I think that's a safe bet every night. But
I think it's a safe bet too. But I don't know. You haven't been on the shows lately, so maybe it's either you're going to say it like 3 or 4 different times, or we're not going to get one at all. So
it also depends on what kind of silliness we're going to see in this game and how high we want to take said silliness.
Right. So it'll be interesting. So I've got the Devin Booker over on rebounds. He is at 5.5, and that's a minus 120. So the odds on this one have switched because they were a plus for a while, but the number of rebounds has kind of gone down. So the last time I pulled this one as one of my bets, it was closer to like 7.5. Mm-hmm. So the over has gone down, but the odds have also gone down. So, but I still think Devin hits the over on it. So that's what I'm putting my money on. So unfortunately tonight, we won't see Monty Williams go head-to-head against his mentor, Greg Popovich, because Pop is also out after having a minor medical procedure, is what the Spurs called it. Instead, he will face Brett Brown, who is filling in for Coach Pop. But Monty does know Brett Brown as well. He was an assistant under him in Philadelphia before he came to the Suns. So do you think coaches, because a lot of times coaches, like Monty was a former athlete, right? Former player in the league. Do you think coaches have a little bit of rivalry the same way some players have rivalries too?
Sure. Yeah, it's only human nature. I mean, it's you want to beat, you want to beat your mentors. You want to show them that like you've not only progressed, but maybe that you've surpassed what they laid out before you. So I think coaches definitely go. They're all competitive. Let's just be honest. And so anything that they can take anything that they can use to take personally, I'm sure they will.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these guys are competitive with each other when they're on the same roster. Monty's talked about that with him and Willie Green before. I'm sure it's the same with him and Pop, or him and Brett Brown, him and Doc, like whoever he's come into contact with over the years. I don't think there's any like extra animosity like sometimes we see between players and teams when we talk about rivalries, but I think it's very much a friendly competition that they enjoy participating in, maybe more than a typical game.
So even though we won't see Monty out there, or not Monty, Coach Pop out there tonight, Saul, you did kind of look up what Monty and Pop have been able to do early on in their careers as head coaches. Do you want to kind of break that down for us?
Yeah, it's more of their early on careers. Really, Monty's first 4 years here with the Suns, and then what Pop did. Pop took over a franchise that was kind of just in disarray. They had a few pieces, but they still needed several more. So that first year, I think they won 17 games. Monty's first year was a little bit more successful than that. But after that, that following year, I believe that was the 98-99 season, when it was a shortened season, 50-game season, much like Monty's, first season after the bubble, and how that was kind of truncated. And then the Suns went obviously all the way to the finals. The Spurs actually won against the Knicks in their finals. So it's just a lot of similarities in terms of Monty's second stint as a head coach and Pop's first stint, because I believe Monty learned a lot from that first stint in New Orleans. The things that he should avoid, the things that he should probably focus a little bit more on. And I think that's probably made him a much better coach. And then those life lessons alongside Pop, coaching beside one of the greatest coaches of all time. And not only just from an on the court perspective, but also off the court. And I think if you talk to Monty and asked him about like just recollecting his first stint in New Orleans and then the second stint here with the Suns, and what he would probably take away from any messages between him and Pop, it's probably like players need to know that like you're more than just a coach to them. Like they buy into a person more than they'll ever buy into a coach. And I think that's probably something that Pop is obviously resonated with tons of players with. And so, yeah, I think the similarities are great. I think one of the things that Monty's going to learn how to improve on is just, overall game execution from time to time. I think there's some times where he has some missteps that I know he'd like back, but overall, I think he's doing a great job. And I think that Pop has been a large reason in terms of that success.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of his core philosophies are things that he took from his time in San Antonio. You talk about, just the principle of kind of pounding the rock, keep jabbing, and eventually your opponent will wear out. He's talked about that. He's talked about just kind of the 0.5 terminology and in terms of moving the ball or making quick decisions with it. That's something he took from San Antonio. And I think, Saul, to your point as well, his leadership style, as far as trusting his players more and honestly sometimes to a fault, is something that he's taken from San Antonio. He'll be the first to tell you the difference between him in New Orleans and him here is how much more willing he is to listen to other people, empower them, delegate instead of, my way or the highway. And that's kind of one of the reasons that we've seen Willie G go on and flourish somewhere else. We've seen Kevin Young get interviews for other jobs. Monty is very much a guy that listens to the people that he brings onto his staff because he wants differing opinions. He wants to be challenged and for the team to be better for it. So that's definitely something I think Pop resonates with Pop as well.
I really enjoy how everybody who has been through Pop's program typically comes out the other side with positive things to say about what they were able to learn, what their takeaways were, and just like their experience overall within that staff. And I hope that Monty, we kind of see that continue to grow as well, because like you said, Willie Green, he got his opportunity to become a head coach. Nothing but great things to say about the staff over here on the basketball side of things with Phoenix. And I hope that continues, because I think there's something to be said about that being part of your legacy as well. Like, yes, Pop is a very winning coach, and that's amazing. But also when you're able to point to the human element of this game as well, there's something to be said about that. And I think we see that a lot with Monty in the way that the players speak about him, and people who come through the organization also speak about him and that coaching staff. How long do you guys think we've got left of Pop in the NBA?
Probably not much longer. I would say at the most, maybe another 5 years at the most.
Yeah, I would say probably around that same thing. I know he's been having fun with this rebuild, but at a certain point, I don't know if that's how he kind of wants to go off into the sunset. So
one of the things that I will say is Pop is obviously, he's up there in age, and he lost his wife a little while back, and I can only imagine what is there, what I mean, like what's looking at him on the other side of retirement. Usually when you're looking at that, you're looking at more time to spend with your family, your wife, your kids and stuff like that. But the kids are all grown and they're all out of the house. It was just him and his wife, and now maybe there's just nothing else. You know what I mean? Like, he still has his family, don't get me wrong, but you're still going back to an empty house at the end of the night, right? And I would probably assume there's probably a part of that he's like, dude, I have nothing else to do. Like, this is me, and I'm going to enjoy it. And I don't blame him for it.
Yeah, I don't blame him either. Honestly, we see a lot of the same similarities as far as like Al McCoy. He's such a huge part of the Suns franchise that you almost don't want to see him leave. And then he's in the same boat of the things you just described about Pop. Like, why wouldn't he continue to do his job? As long as you're able to do it and do it well enough, why not?
Yeah.
Keep on going. Keep on trucking along. All right, gentlemen, any final thoughts before we send everybody to watch this game?
Hey, I'll tell you what, it's probably a high likelihood that the Suns are going to win. So at least an Arizona team on one Sunday will win. So that's good.
Ouch. Ouch.
I've been holding on to that for like 30 minutes.
And with that, we will say goodbye. Enjoy this one. And don't forget to meet us right back here after it wraps up. Bye.